Now, Parliament resumes sitting today after the eventful inauguration of the 8th Parliament, characterized by chaotic scenes last Thursday. Among other things, the Speaker is expected to give directions on which side of the House constitute the majority. Leadership of the NDC and NPP in Parliament spent the last 3 days trying to resolve the issue bordering on sitting arrangement in the House. What more can we expect when proceedings begin today? Our parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku-Gakpo joins us live with more. Joseph, first of all, we understand some NPP MPs went to the House as early as 4 a.m. Some other persons may have slept in their offices. What can you tell us in terms of how early they arrived just to take a position in the House?
Precisely. It's one of those days that 10 o'clock when sitting is supposed to begin in the House.
It's one of those days that 10 o'clock when sitting is supposed to begin in the House. You see more than half of all MPs present as at 10 o'clock. Most of the times when you are told sitting will begin around 10 o'clock, we end up having sitting starting around midday because a lot of the MPs delay in showing up on the floor. But today, even as early as 4 a.m. as we're gathering, a lot of the MPs, particularly on the NPP side, has showed up in the House essentially to come take the right-hand side of the Speaker. And this is a big issue because they're insisting that they plus the former MP constitutes the majority here in the House. And they've occupied that particular place, not just at the back bench, but even at the front bench. I can see Frank Anodompre, who is the whip on the NPP side, right on the front bench alongside his deputy, the MP for Ayawaso West Wogon. So they are here in their white. The NDC team, which came in a bit late, have occupied the left-hand side. For the records, their leader on the NDC side had indicated that they wouldn't mind occupying the left side of the Speaker, all other things being equal, if the right side gets occupied one way or the other, because for them, that's not a very big issue. All that they're still insisting on is that they would want to have the chairmanship of at least 8 of the select committees here in the House. And so we're waiting for sitting to begin. I've not seen the leadership on the NDC side in the chamber yet, although some of the MPs have managed to occupy seats here in the House, including the controversial MP for Asen North. You recall that he was the center of a lot of action a few days ago because there was a claim that there was an injunction on him from holding himself out as an MP. So we're waiting for the necessary processes to unfold, for the Speaker to show up, and for the sitting to begin eventually right here in Parliament House.
This side entered the chamber way earlier than the NDC did. Were there confrontations? Did they disagree with where they were expected to sit?
From what we're gathering, there was nothing like any confrontation of a sort. Looks like the NPP team came in a lot earlier when the NDC team hadn't come around, so then they just managed to occupy the very right-hand side of the Speaker. The interesting bit is that there are supposed to be name tags on a lot of the seats indicating where each of the MPs are supposed to be sitting. You recall that proved controversial on the 9th of 6 January 2021 because we had the situation where the NDC MPs went on to take off the name tags of the NPP MPs on the right-hand side of the Speaker. This time around, that doesn't appear to have happened. I've been trying to pay attention as to whether there are name tags on the seats. Some of them do. That of the first Deputy Speaker, Jose Usu, which obviously is a seat that's not in contention because he's been sitting there right through the second Parliament, right through the 7th Parliament, through the 8th Parliament. His own appears to be sitting there as far as his name tag is concerned, but the rest of the MPs don't have name tags on their end. And essentially, this is so much of a formality because the expectation is that the Speaker, Alban Bagwin, will be asked to give a ruling not just on which side constitutes majority, but also in terms of ensuring that there is no chaos in the House, who should sit where before the close of the sitting today, which we are waiting for.
And Joseph, does the NPP have a certain theme flowing through their appearance today because they all seem to be in white?
Mama, if you can say that again for me, I'll be glad. It's a little difficult hearing you.
I'm asking why the NPP is in white in Parliament, if there's a theme running through their appearance and what kind of statement they seek to make in the chamber today?
It's simple. They are insisting that they are the victorious side in the House, although their candidate for the speakership position lost on the dawn of 7 January. Essentially, that's the message they're seeking to carry out there by asking all their members to show up in white. They are insisting that they still hold the majority in Parliament. For them, despite the defeat, if you could put it so, with the speakership race, they still insist that they are victorious and they are the ones who will be running affairs and be the majority as far as this 8th Parliament is concerned. So that's how come they are in white. More than 90% of them, I could count just about 3 or 4 NPP MPs who are not in white. But apart from that, virtually all of them, including members of their leadership, are in white. And from what I gather, this is communication that went to them yesterday after a meeting of the caucus, that they should be in celebratory mood. And for them, that's exactly what the white should signify, because they're insisting that they are the majority here in Parliament, despite the loss that they had as far as the speakership race is concerned. And that's what they are celebrating, wearing the white attire today.
Joseph, take us through what we should expect. There are some major decisions to be made, some clear directions to be made by the Speaker as well.
So there are a number of items on the agenda today, even as the House sits. One of the things we are expecting to happen is that the NPP side will be making an official request to the Speaker, Alban Bagbin, on who exactly constitutes majority in the House. And we're expecting that Alexander Afenyo-Markins, who is the deputy leader on the NPP side, will lead that charge in terms of making that request to the Speaker to declare they, the NPP, the majority side, by virtue of the fact that the former MP, Andrew Amokwesi-Yama, wants to do business with them. So we're expecting that to unfold. Apart from them asking the Speaker to rule on who constitutes the majority here in the House, we're expecting that there will be a request to him that as part of efforts to ensure order in the House, he should pronounce which side each of the two should sit. It's not captured in the standing orders who should sit on which side of the Speaker, but the standing orders are again clear that for anything that the standing orders don't make provision for, the Speaker can rule in that regard. You can expect a request to him in that regard to pass a judgment or a ruling on who should sit on which side of the House. Not just that, there's been a hint from Haruna Idrisu, who leads the NDC side, that he'll be requesting that the Speaker, one way or the other, goes ahead and give a pronouncement on what should be done about the chaos that characterized the event as far as the activities of the election of the Speaker are concerned. And the expectation is that he may end up moving a motion for the setting up of an investigation into that particular incident, including the armed military and police invasion of the House. That's expected to happen. And then finally, one very critical thing, we're expecting that the leaders in the House would go ahead and initiate the processes that will lead to the nomination and setting up of what is called a selection committee, which will be chaired by the Speaker. Now, is that selection committee which will determine which MP should be on which committee of the House and who should be chair and who should be vice chair and who should be ranking member. That committee is supposed to be chaired by the Speaker, and it's supposed to be the first committee that the House will set up, and then is that committee which will deliberate on who should be in which committee and return to the House with those specific details for the House to approve that. So we again expecting that apart from the Speaker chairing the committee, in terms of those who would constitute the other members of the committee, the motion will be moved for approval of the other members of that particular committee so they can begin work as soon as possible and recommend to the House which MP should serve on which committee. Those and other issues are on the agenda today, even as the House prepares to begin sitting.
You did mention that the Asin NP is in Parliament. Any hints whether or not the NPP side is going to raise issues with his presence in Parliament today?
So I've spotted him here. He's in an ash attire, wearing his white face mask in his spectacle. Currently, he's reading the standing orders, a copy of which is in his hands, and he's reading. We don't get the indication that there may be any efforts to probably get him out of the chamber, because we all know that he was sworn in as Speaker. He was sworn in as a member by the Speaker on the dawn of 7th January. From what we're gathering, there is further deliberation ongoing at the level of leadership in terms of what should be done as far as the said injunction that was placed on him from holding himself out as an MP is concerned, and a conclusive conversation at the level of leadership on what should be done as far as he's concerned have not been reached yet. So as far as we gather, he will be part of the business today, and it's not likely that the NPP side will raise an objection as far as him participating in the processes of the House are concerned. I gather that even before the sitting itself, there is they call that conclave, and conclave is a meeting of leadership and Speaker even before sitting itself on the floor happens. We gather that meeting is unfolding right now in order to allow for the agreed agenda to be approved before then they get into the chamber. We're expecting that Chairman Sabons will be reading what is described as the business statement of the House to detail the agenda over the next few days, even as the House begins sitting. And then they will take a break to allow for the MPs to go through orientation and all. But all of those details will unfold in a while. But yes, the Asin North MP, Mr. Kwesi, is in the chamber, and we can't expect, from how we are gathering, that there will be any objection to his participation in the proceedings in the House.
And thanks to our camera technician, we got a fair appreciation in the description that you gave, Joseph, of him busily studying the order paper today. But Joseph, what was the advertised time for sitting today? Because it's 13 minutes after 10 already.
The official time is actually 10 o'clock. When Speaker Alban Bagbin adjourned sitting on 7 January, he adjourned sitting to 15 January today, Friday, at 10 o'clock in the forenoon. That's how it's pronounced. And that was supposed to be 10 o'clock, but it's 30 minutes after 10, and still the sitting hasn't started. So we're expecting that any moment from now, the sitting will start. But on a regular day, it's normal that although the House is supposed to begin sitting at 10 o'clock, sometimes sitting delay for 2 hours and sometimes 3 hours, and eventually begins at 1 o'clock. So it's virtually normal that although sitting is supposed to begin at 10, you are not having the sitting begin now. What doesn't look normal is the reality that we have a lot of MPs on the floor today, even as at 10:30. I've just spotted James Klucha-Veji, who is deputy leader on the NDC side, right here in the House. He is in an interaction with the former defense minister and MP for Bimbilla North, Dominic Nitiwu, and Esikado Ketan MP Joe Gate, who is the former minister for railway development. And some of the other leaders are getting in. We gathered that there was a meeting ongoing at the level of leadership, which was why things were stalling a bit. But now that we're seeing some of the leaders, including James Klucha-Veji, working, then chances are that sitting itself may begin any moment from now. So we are waiting. And funny enough, today, a lot of MPs that you don't see in the House on regular basis, speaking of those who are in the 7th Parliament, are showing up. And clearly, on both sides, looks like the whips are whipping up their members to show up and participate in today's sitting.
Yeah, isn't that a bit too early? Because they probably have not been mentioned as ministers, so we can't tell if this is what we're going to see throughout this 8th Parliament. But Joseph, just before I leave, because we will join you certainly when the Speaker arrives, tell us about the security situation. Are there outside security people in the chamber today, or we're just strictly dealing with the normal security in terms of the marshals of Parliament?
Mamavi, outside Parliament itself, there isn't that heavy security that we had seen all the way from the 4th of January up until the 7th of January, with the military armored cars, parked outside, a bunch of security folks guiding and, observing proceedings and all from outside the chamber. We are not seeing that heavy security. The other bit about, possibly what looks like increased security that we've seen is right in front of the sitting itself, in front of the chamber itself. We've had the situation of one or two armed police people standing right at the entrance before you go through the metallic checkpoints and enter the chamber proper. That is something that is usually not normal on a regular day as far as the sitting of the House is concerned. That's more like the only extra kind of security that we are seeing right in the presence of Parliament, apart from the regular security guys who stop you when you are driving in, and then the checks that get done when you are getting into the chamber itself. So we are not seeing so much of extraordinary security in the House. But Mamavi, if you have a bit of time, I've just gotten hold of what is described as the order paper, which is the paper that lays out the details of the issues that the House will be dealing with, even as sitting commences. Today is just a 2-page document. I'm holding it right here, as you can see. Let me run you through the specific details in a while. The House is expecting that there will be statements by leadership on the determination of the formula for the composition of membership of committees, as well as parliamentary delegations and other parliamentary groups and associations. So we're expecting that said formula determination document to be laid in the House for the necessary approval. Well, not laid in the House, but specifically a statement on that. And the expectation is that that may cover issues having to do with not just the composition of the membership of the committees, but also most likely things like who constitutes majority and who constitutes minority. And then you know that Parliament actually also deals with a lot of things, including having representation in the ECOWAS Parliament, that's the Economic Community of West African States, as well as the African Union Parliament. So we're expecting that leadership would make a statement on the formula that they would use to determine the membership of those committees. Very controversial, because the NDC wants to hold on to the chairmanship of about 8 different committees, and the MPP is insisting that they should actually hold on to the chairmanship of all the 8 committees. So that will be done. And then apart from that, once that gets laid, we're expecting a report of the leadership on the said formula when it comes to the composition of the committees. And then there will be the reports from leadership on the composition of various parliamentary delegations as well. And then we're expecting that there would also be the report on the composition of the committee of selection, as well as the committees on appointments and also the business committees. So it is very much likely that before close of day today, we would know who is part of the appointment committee as far as the 8th Parliament is concerned, because of course Parliament is in a hurry to vet whoever the ministers of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo will be. So it looks like that's the very critical things that the House will be dealing with today, even as the sitting actually begins. They would also be approving the membership of the committee to advise the Speaker on the appointment of 4 other people to the Parliamentary Service Board. They are expected to get that approved a little later in the day as well. So beyond all the issues about the interruptions you are likely to see with motions for approval of investigations into various issues, by close of day, we would know who would be sitting on the appointment committee of Parliament today, and as well, we would know who would be members of the selection committee that would determine the various committees of the House. But what we would know today would be the formula in terms of who should be on which committee, what the arrangement should be in terms of how many people should be on the committee and how many NDC people should be on the committee. All of that is what is captured on the order paper, even as the House prepares to begin sitting any moment from now. Amavi.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Joseph. There was some rearrangement because of COVID-19. Parliament itself put in place some protocols. Explain, was there supposed to be a full House, or 275 at any point in time?
And so that rearrangement was done. A number of the seats were taken out, about 1/3 of the seats in the chamber were taken out. On the front bench, there were just about 3 seats instead of the current 4 seats that we have. This arrangement, as you see currently, is how the House used to sit before COVID-19. And then when COVID-19 hit, as part of the various COVID-19 protocols, then we had the situation where a lot of the seats were taken out. But business continued as usual, because a lot of MPs would, on a regular day, not show up on the floor, so they were still okay with it. But right from the night of the 6th of January, the COVID-19 arrangement to space out MPs was actually thrown out. Now they are back to their regular sitting, 4 of them on the front bench of both sides. It's now a chamber that occupies up to 275 people, which is the normal arrangement. The continuous COVID-19 protocol which is being observed has to do with the fact that virtually all the MPs are in their face masks right here in the chamber, but looks like we are back to the regular arrangement, which has to do with the fact that there is no adequate spacing because all MPs are expected on the floor today and beyond. And so then looks like this is how we'll see the House sitting over the next few days and even beyond. There was a suggestion that some MPs should move up and take up the public gallery so that then there is still adequate spacing. But of course, then the question becomes who goes into the public gallery and who stays in the chamber proper. And then there's also the question about what happens to the media folks who usually occupy the public gallery when it comes to the cameras and all to bring proceedings to the public. Then what happens to them? So it looks like the eventual decision is that we would have them sit as they were sitting pre-COVID, except that the staff of the clerk are moving about with hand sanitizers, and they are occasionally asking the MPs to make use of them as part of the efforts to ensure that one way or the other COVID-19 doesn't spread. But clearly, we are back to the pre-COVID seating arrangement right here in Parliament, with the MPs closely seated together and virtually touching each other when they need to move within one space or the other right here in Parliament House. A while ago, I spotted the deputy leader on the NPP side, Alexander Afenyo-Markins, also walking to the chamber, again giving the indication that whatever deliberations were ongoing by leadership at conclave, which is a closed-door meeting between the leaders and the speaker, has actually come to an end. And so then you can expect that any moment from now, the speaker, Alban Bagwin, will be getting into the chamber to commence proceedings. This will be his 3rd time that he will be presiding over the sitting of the House in the 8th Parliament, although in the 7th Parliament, by virtue of the fact that he was the 2nd Deputy Speaker, he had presided over a number of sittings, including when the House approved the Right to Information Bill. But this will be his 3rd sitting. He sat through when MPs were sworn in. He again sat through when the President was sworn in the presence of Parliament, although that was not in the chamber. That was in a temporary tent that was erected right here in Parliament House. And so this will be his 3rd chairing of a meeting here in Parliament as far as the 8th Parliament is concerned, although this will be his 2nd in the chamber. And the Speaker usually comes into the chamber in grand style, if I could put it that way, because then when he is about getting in, then the officials from the Marshal's office announce that the Speaker is coming in and all MPs are supposed to get up, and when they are up, everyone stays put in their seats, and then he walks in right from the entrance until he gets to his seat. Before then, MPs are then allowed to move in the chamber or anything like that. So we're still waiting for that to unfold any moment from now, even as the sitting arrangement in the House returns to what existed pre-COVID, without any observance of physical distancing, all other things being equal.
Yeah. In the meantime, we know that our COVID situation is not improving. Joseph, we will leave it here and then return to Parliament when the Speaker enters the chamber. I remember the Speaker in the 7th Parliament giving a directive, no handshaking, for instance, and physical contact. But as you can see there, no social distancing in Parliament. In this 8th Parliament, at least this first major sitting after all the chaos and the drama from the 6th and 7th January that we saw in the House.